So Diane won't tell you about this, but she just had a birthday yesterday. So please join me in singing happy birthday. Ready? A 1 and a 2 and a 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Diane. Happy birthday to you.
It was birthday 76, because I'm sure everybody's wondering.
Oh, and away we go. My name's Joan Fowler. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area, the nation's capital. Also, sometimes called Comedy Central, since Saturday Night Live tends to get most of their material from there. Can you guys see me okay? I'm just trying to, can you lower the lights just a little bit? Yeah, I'm sort of, I could be blind after a while.
I usually do.
Then I'll need a healing.
You distracted me there.
Oh, okay. Are any of you Reconnective Healing Practitioners in the audience who've done it? There you go. Will you just stand up and say your name? Terry's here. Yeah, go ahead, Terry, go.
I'm Terry Larkin. I'm from Holland, Michigan, and I'm in Chicago a lot, so I've actually done some healing here in Chicago.
And she's a near-death experience.
I'm also a near-death experiencer. I spoke here 2 years ago.
Oh, awesome. Anyone else? So the reason I say that is there are a lot of near-death experiencers that are attracted to the light and information of reconnective healing. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my near-death experience and some of the after effects. And then later this afternoon, if you guys are interested, guys and gals are interested, I'm going to take you through a few exercises so you can feel these frequencies, so that you start to entrain with this work, and you can use it for your family, friends, and pets. Are you guys up for that?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So in 1989, I was in California starting a new job, pretty high stress. I must have been working about 60 hours a week. And I was also trying to keep up my professional triathlon career. So I was cycling and running and swimming on the weekends. And this particular day, it was beautiful. You know, that blue California sky right at the beach. I was cycling just before Laguna Beach out on a 60-mile cycle. I could smell the salt air and I could hear the surf crashing at my favorite surfing place. And I was like, wow, this is so great. And then all of a sudden, a truck turned right into me. Now, I didn't see the truck. The only thing I knew was all of a sudden I was out of my body and I was looking down. I was halfway sort of under the truck. And by now people were starting to gather. And it was just interesting. So I didn't have there was no pain. It was just like, wow, I'm in a different, I'm having an experience where I'm in a different place, a different perspective. And so I wasn't afraid, I was just fascinated. I know that sounds strange, but the thing was people were starting to gather and they started to circle, you know, they were looking and they weren't really helping, which I found interesting, but I could hear their thoughts. So as I focused, I could hear one group of people, they were thinking, oh, wow, I really love to help, but I don't know what to do. So they were a little bit afraid to do anything. And then there was another group, they were afraid legally, they wanted to help, but they were afraid they might get a lawsuit levied against them. It was really wild that I could hear this. And then the last group that was focusing was like, wow, this is cool, a dead person. You know, like they were just waiting for the ambulance to come and clean up the aftermath. And as I focused on these people, it was fascinating because I could sort of feel into their emotions. I could feel into their life a little bit. There was starting to be like a lack of separation between me, my individuation, and them. And then it just became not a very great interest, because towards my right side, I could feel a magnetic pull. And as I turned towards my right, I could see this beautiful, palpable white light. And I started to allow myself to just go towards it. It was irresistible. It was full of joy. I couldn't resist it. So as I started to float or merge with the light, I started to feel myself in everything. In the molecules of the water at my favorite surfing place, in the grains of sand, in every atom on the planet, in every being, in every plant, in every animal. There was no separation. And if I wanted to just experience one of those things, I just had to focus. And I could have the whole experience of a cat, for example, or a dog, or a newborn baby or a mother. I just had to focus on that. And I sat there absorbing all this oneness with this beautiful light. And I thought, oh, I don't want to go back. This is just, I could be here forever. And I just sort of sat there and felt all of my being vibrating in that oneness. And then I heard this voice say, or no, there's not much talking, but more of a knowing. You can stay if you want. But what about your mother and your grandmother? And in that instant, as I thought about what my mother and grandmother would thought if I stayed, I could feel myself going the other way. And another tunnel opened up, this swirl where I was headed back towards this ambulance, which was at the very end of this tornado, this vortex. And I could see it. It was almost like I was focusing on it. And as I focused on the ambulance, I started to go towards it. And I came around the backside. The ambulance was headed around the canyon. I knew my body was in there. And as I came in, I was watching this guy. He was sweating. He was anxious. I could feel him. I could feel him like I could feel those people on the ground. I could feel his life. I could feel that morning he made banana pancakes for his two little girls, and I could smell them. I could almost taste the banana pancakes. And I could feel the love that he had for them and the love that he had for his wife. And I could also feel a little bit of the anxiousness that he had, because he thought he had done something. He was a new EMT tech. He thought he'd done something wrong and had lost me. And so he was vigorously doing CPR to try to get me back. But the love of his wife and his daughters and the banana pancakes totally eclipsed all the angst. And boom, I was back in my body. And he said, wow, we almost lost you. And I was like, whoa. To this day, I say that the only reason I came back was for my mother and my grandmother and that man's tasty banana pancakes. And of course, the love that he had for his wife and his two daughters. You know, after that, I was pretty much of a physical wreck. I had a shoulder that was pretty crushed, and it had to be screwed back on. So they had put me in a figure 8, which was not really a good fit for me, since my shoulder was not really connected. And so the next day, I walked 3 miles to the hospital, because by then, I was starting to lose my use of my right arm. You know, a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you tell the guy what was going on? And think about it, this is 1989, and there were not a lot of materials out about near-death experiences. Raymond Moody's book came out in, what was it, 75, and Barnes & Noble's just wasn't carrying it yet. So I went to the hospital, I walked there, and the surgeon, they just happened to be the best orthopedist in the LA area on staff that day. He was making rounds, and they called him in to see me, and he said, I hope you haven't eaten breakfast yet. And they threw me on the table and they took me in. So I was watched over, I was cared for. I could have lost my right arm that day, but they had the best surgeon in the house there. So Look, over the next 2 weeks to a month, I was having dreams that were prolific. It was as if that experience had downloaded for me this information, and it continues to be available. It's available to all of us. I mean, sometimes we don't always have the ears to hear it or the eyes to see it. But as we become more aware, as we come to meetings like this and we hang out with people who are able to see this, who have a more broad expanse, then it starts to happen for us too. This entrainment starts to happen. And for me, I was full on. So I would go to the grocery store, I'd be at checkout, and I was falling in love with everyone. Like, I would fall in love with the flowers, I'd be at the checkout register with the cashier, and I couldn't, I could still see their life, and I could appreciate them for the enormity of who they were, not just the little physical focus that we have. I was falling in love with every person I would meet. It was just euphoric. And so I would try to tell my parents, and my siblings, and they would be like, that day that you had that wreck, you were cycling without your helmet. And we think you probably had a head injury. One of the other recurring dreams that I often still have is I am floating into this room, and there's a big globe of the world, it's sort of glistening, and around the world are eyes. They're encircling the world, and they're all closed. And as I get near it, one pair of eyes opens. And it's almost as like I have an electric shock go through my body. It's really tingly. And I start to be in that same place of knowing everything that's going on the planet. There's no separation again. And then those eyes would close, and the next pair of eyes would open. And again, I would have that awareness of everything going on. It was just electric. So a recurring dream that would tell me a lot about what was going on, what is going on now as we approach this, this horizon of knowingness, of this lack of separation that we have. And for me also, with my coworkers, it was as if I had a sixth sense open up. I would know what they would need, immediately. And my parents were still worried, and they kept calling me, "Are you okay?" And they were trying to get me set up to go to a psychologist. And after that 2-month period, post-near-death experience, I still didn't know I'd had that, because that wasn't something that was known to me. It was just an experience. A desert storm happened. And because I was in the military and in the reserves, I was called back into service. There are a couple of things that you don't talk about in the military. One is paranormal experiences, unless you're on their secret team. And the other is you don't talk about seeing things, because you could end up in a straitjacket somewhere in Leavenworth or wherever they take people. So I knew to keep my mouth shut. And I took everything, that huge experience, and I put it in a tiny little box, and I packed it up, and I put it way back in the back of the closet. And I didn't talk about it anymore. But I was still having those glimpses, those awareness moments. But I would never tell anybody about them. And in 2008, I picked up Eric Pearl's book, The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. And somebody had left it on my coffee table. And as I picked it up, I felt a huge electric shock. And so I dropped it. I was like, okay, my friends are up to something, because most of them are engineers, and so they're playing a joke on me. So I got the wooden spoon out of the drawer, and I took a little metal thing off of it, because I thought my friends had put an electric shock device in the book, and I carefully went through it, and I didn't find anything. So I put a sign on my home office door, network problem in process. Who knew it was going to be my problem? And for the next 3 hours, I poured through that book. Now, I never read anything of that type, of that ilk. I was just down with the technical manuals. You see, I worked for a telecom company at that time. Actually, I worked for Verizon, and I was a senior telecom engineer. We were busy laying fiber and getting what we now know as the internet up. It was the beginning of that expansion. So I really didn't have time to read these type of things, and I was just a workaholic. I was very type A, very work-oriented, and that was about to change. So I decided as an experiment, I didn't feel like I needed any healing. I really, that wasn't for me. But I thought as an experiment, since I was getting the electric shock from this book, even as I was reading it, that I would go and try a couple of sessions. I would have 3 healing sessions and a process we call the Reconnection. And in the first session, as I lay on the table, I started feeling that electric current happen in my body. It was very strong. And interestingly enough, my practitioner was a massage therapist as well, and she had a heating pad on the table. And so I thought it had a short, so I told her, I said, I think your heating pad has a short. And she said, well, Jonah, it's off, but next time you come, I'll unplug it. So the next time I went, the heating pad was totally removed from the table, and I relaxed enough into that second session that I started to hear a fan, and I thought, oh my God, she got rid of the heating pad, but now she's got a fan turned on. And it got really loud. It started to feel like a jet airplane was about to take off. And I started hearing it, and I started hearing it humming as it gently came up my body. And I could feel it going through, like it was shutting down in my feet, shutting down in my knees, shutting down in my chest. And then I was out of my body. The humming stopped. And I was in this beautiful light. Just like in my near-death experience, I had allowed myself to have that experience again. This work was of that vibration. I like to say it's the frequencies of home. And I was in that loving light, and I could feel them working on my heart. It was as if it was being repaired. I've never told this before, but I was telling Diane. I used to have, when I would do sports really hard, my heart would start to do this thing where it beats really fast. Arrhythmia, I think is what they call it. And after that session, I didn't have that anymore. So I knew something had happened. But 10 years after that session, we found out that my dad had a congenital heart problem with a valve there that caused arrhythmia that now I no longer had. So something happened within that session. And then the third session, I came back to have another healing session. I came back for the Reconnection, which I'll tell you a little bit about. I was worried. I was like, oh, I'm going to lose this light, and I'm not worthy. And I wanted to know from this light, do you still love me? And the light responded, yes, we love you. Now pay attention. And I heard this voice say, you are this. You are love. You are light. And this is your birthright. This is your birthright, to not minimize your light. To be who you are, in the fullness of who you are, in every day. Don't play it small. And so I took that, and I went from that session. I didn't tell my partner. My child was 6 at the time. And as I would lay down in bed at night going to sleep, and he used to sleep with us even up to 6, I would wait till they drifted off to sleep. And I would see them go into register. And when we talk about registers, the eyes will start flickering or the hands will start moving. So I knew something was happening because that was happening every night that this was going on. So think about it, something was being transferred. From those healing sessions, they were able to access that too. So as we come into contact with this, we're able to carry it. Just like that voice told me, it's our birthright. This is our birthright to carry this. So I never told my partner until they read the book too, and they wanted to go to the seminar, and we all went to the seminar. And here's what Eric said at the seminar. He said, when you leave this seminar, you can do this work at the same level that I can do it, that anyone on the planet can do it, that anyone who has been studying for 30 years, eating sacred foods, changing their name, praying for, for everything, praying for knowingness, going to the monasteries. You don't have to do that anymore. We're in a new day. We only have to open our eyes to see. And I thought to myself, that's crazy, right? So I couldn't believe that, because I came from that. You got to work hard to do this. I had my own bag of unworthiness, especially because I wasn't a healer. I had arrived there. There were a couple of other engineers and a lot of people who had been through healing backgrounds. They had healing backgrounds. So I was like, I'll probably never use this. But when I got back to the office on Monday, I wanted to know if it was real. I wanted to know if what Eric was saying was real, and if it worked outside of that seminar. So I got in early, and I peeked over the cube, and there were my two best friends, Chris and Brian, and I said, hey guys, I went to a seminar this weekend. And they said, oh, you mean on the one on the new Cisco router and switch? And I said, well, I said, not exactly. I said, it was a healing seminar. They're like, no way. I said, yeah, I just went, on a whim. A friend went with me. I said, but they had some science behind it. And they said, okay, well, what is it? I said, well, you know how we're putting fiber optics into the data center, and we're using light now to transmit information? I said, it's like that. I said, this is like light and information, except we're transmitting it through the air. And they said, oh, you mean like the cell phones and like the fiber optics we're doing in the data center? I said, yeah. I said, I just want to see, I spent some money on the class. I want to see if it really works, if it really works. So we went to the lab. They were okay with it. We went to the lab, and I cleared off a metal table. It wasn't even a massage table. It was a metal table, and I had Brian lay down, and I just raised my hand just like this. And I just started to feel, this is all hands off. It's all hands off. And I just started to feel the air. In this work we don't talk about sending. So I'm not bringing energy in and sending it out. I'm actually I'm feeling. So I'm connecting with the field. See, we have access to everything. Just like in my near-death experience, I was connected with everything. So I could feel that. I could feel that in the atmosphere. And as I started to connect with that, I noticed Brian's eyes blinking. And then his feet started to move. I was like, oh, that's cool. And Chris was laughing. I said, dude, you're next. And this was only he was only on the table for 5 minutes. And then Chris lay down. Same thing happened. So, his eyes started to move, and he started giggling. That was just his response. And his feet were doing this back and forth. And I said, well, thanks, guys. And they were like, cool, they went back to work. A week later, Brian was sort of sheepishly hanging around outside my cube. And I said, what's up, man? And he said, well, you know that thing we did in the lab last week? He said, I was waiting to tell you. I waited a week to tell you. He said, you don't know it, but for 13 years I've had neuropathy. And, he couldn't go play ball with his kids. He couldn't walk in the park with his wife. I mean, it really severely affected him. And I said, I didn't know. He said, yeah, well, after that thing we did on the table, it's gone. He said, I haven't taken my drugs all week. And it's still the same for him, So sometimes these healings, they're instantaneous, right? And I wasn't focused on his feet. I think I was mostly about 3 feet away from him, just playing and feeling. And I didn't know he had neuropathy. So it was true what Eric was saying, that you don't need to know what the illness is. It's better off, you're better off if your practitioner doesn't know your limitations, then they don't focus on the feet. I mean, it's not gonna harm you if they focus on the feet and that's where it needs to go. But this work is intelligent. It goes beyond our ability to diagnose. Diagnosis, do you know what the origin of the word is? Di and agnosis. Di means two, and agnosis means don't know. So there's two of you that don't know, you and your doctor. The willingness to just drop those limitations of trying to fix something because it's okay, just accepting it for what it is, and work in the field, paying attention, allowing. Your awareness allows these frequencies of light and information to go where they need to go. It is intelligent. We are often not so intelligent in how we try to fix something. For example, if you come in and you say, it's my knee problem, what if I work on the knee the whole time, but actually problems in the hip, okay? These frequencies are smart enough that they're going to go to your hip if that's where you need to have it happen, right? But I don't need to focus there. I just focus where I'm interested. So that's how that works. And Eric was saying that when you leave here, you can do these healings just like I can. And so I started my journey. And the first place I went to was the military. I went to Walter Reed. I thought, okay, the experiment in the office worked. Let's see how it works over here. And I volunteered for the Red Cross. We just had kids coming back, amputees, first amputees coming back, shell shock, PTSD. And so I thought, well, I'll go work with rehab. Obviously, the Red Cross must have heard of this before. And so I walked in and I talked to the person there who's in charge of the volunteers. And I said, I do reconnective healing. I would love to help people who are in need of rehab. And they said, well, we don't have any openings in rehab, and we don't do that. So they had never heard of Reiki or reconnective healing or anything. And they asked me this crazy question. They said, do you scuba dive? And I was like, wow, I've got a tank on here somewhere. I said, yeah. I said, I have my certification and it's current. They said, well, why don't you go see Richard at the pool? So I walked out of the pool and I tried to tell Richard, hey Richard, I do this thing, it's called Reconnective Healing. And he's like, no, we don't do that. He said, but do you have your diver certification? And I said, yeah, I do. He said, great, we do that and we need you to help. And I said, well, I'm your gal. And so for the next 8 weeks, it was an 8-week program. The kids graduate after 8 weeks learning how to scuba dive and they get to go to the Bahamas. And so after the first 3 weeks, after the first 4 weeks, I would sit next to the poolside just to, some kids need to talk about their experience that they've had in a war zone. And I became very close with many of them. And I wouldn't do anything. I wasn't feeling the frequencies, trying to heal something. I was merely being totally present and listening to their stories without judgment, just listening, receiving them. We often in Reconnective Healing, we talk about receiving. We're receiving these frequencies. We're never sending. And Richard came up to me after the 4th week because he said the kids would come up and say, God, this program is so great, this diving program. My ringing in my ears is gone, and my phantom limb pain is dissipated, and I don't have headaches anymore. And Richard said, look, this has never happened before. He said, is it something you're doing? And I said, well, I don't think so. So for me, I was discovering it wasn't something I was doing. It was something I was being. I had already entered the school of Reconnective Healing. I just didn't know it. And he said, well, I have this knee problem. Can you work on it? So, for me, it was a journey. Now, my next experiment was at it wasn't really an experiment so much as it was meeting a new swim team family. We had a new swim team family that had just joined the team. They had 5 autistic kids, 5 of them. Can you imagine? Both of them were engineers. And their ages ranged from like 13 to 6. So as I started to walk towards the pool, the mom, Tara, ran out to me with open arms and grabbed me and hugged me, and she said, "Hi, who are you?" And I said, "I am Joan." And she said, "You know, we're all one." And I thought, oh my God. I said, "Yes, I know." I thought, oh my God, I met my family member, somebody who knew this too. And she says, "We're all one." And I said, "Yes, I know. How do you know?" She says, "When I was a young girl in school in Cambodia, you may have heard of the bombings there, we would have to run. We could never be outside. Run to school and then run back home. And I had to go within." And then she started to describe to me something that was very familiar. She said, "I would go inside, and when I would go inside, I would come outside, and I could feel myself in the grass, and in the molecules in the air, and in the ocean breeze." And I said, "Me too, I feel that." She said to me, "What is it you do?" And at that time, I was starting to do reconnective healing. I said, "Well, I'm an engineer, but I do reconnective healing." I was just starting to say what I did. And she said, "Well, maybe you could try some of it with my son, Wolfram. He's right up there in the bleachers. He's 13. And Wolfram, just so you know, very highly sensitive. He couldn't stand the touch of water, so he could swim half a lap, but he'd have to get out. And the next day, we needed him for our bee meet, so that we needed his points that he could make for his age group for the bee meet." She said, "He's really looking forward to the bee meet, but he's scared. Can you help him out?" And so as I'm about to walk up there, her daughter's running around me. Her name's Aspen. She said, "Joan, stop. Can you do that thing again?" And I had actually allowed Tara to feel the frequencies. So you want to come up? What's your name? Nancy. Nancy, can you hold your hand out like this? So just hold it like that. I'm going to open your fingers. I'm going to have you open your fingers. Now, I'm gonna focus on your hand right there, right here. Now, this is what I showed Tara, as I'm just coming down and I'm starting to feel, and you just want to focus and notice what you feel. And I was just starting to feel, and her daughter Aspen started running circles around us, giggling. And you may feel something, Nancy. What's the sensation that you feel? Like a cool breeze. There's no cool breeze blowing. Now, as I start to get further away, you might feel something different. But so there's no limitation with this work. As we actually increase the distance, it may intensify. You may notice that. If you had words to express what it feels like, what would you say? What about now? A little breeze again. Yeah. Compression, like pressure. Awesome. All right, thank you. Just have a seat and thank you. So as I felt the frequencies with Tara, she never felt it before. Just like Nancy, she said, I felt like somebody was holding my hand, like putting pressure on it. Or they might have felt some electricity. And so Aspen's busy running around, and she says, Miss Joan, can you do that thing again where you shoot light out of your hand? And I run around and giggle. So for Aspen, many children, you guys have grandkids, and anybody with grandkids? After our exercises today, play with the frequencies with them. They'll be able to feel it. But Aspen could actually see. So I walked up to see Wolfram, and I asked, I didn't explain it to Wolfram. I said, I have something that feels really cool. Would you like to feel it? It's a kind of an energetic thing. And he's like, oh yeah. I said, hold your hand out, just like I did with Nancy. He held his hand out, and then his fingers started to move. And he says, wow. He says, that is like a tesseract. Anybody know what a tesseract is? So a tesseract is like a manifold for fourth and fifth dimensional energy. So we're here in 3D, but our projection is actually beamed down by something that's fourth, fifth dimensional energetic manifold. Like a torus is an example of a manifold, an energy manifold. It's a geometric energy manifold. He says it's almost like a Mobius strip. I was like, wow, this guy speaks my language. I had a minor in physics, so I knew what he was talking about. And then he said, you know the story of Flatland, don't you? Anybody, just the show of hands, anybody know the story of Flatland? Oh, one or two. Has been watched, was it Bill Tiller's movie? I can't remember the name of it. Down the Rabbit Hole. Anyway, I said, yeah, I remember it, but I wanted to hear his story. So just briefly, in Flatland, everything is flat. It's two-dimensional. And there's squares and triangles and different shapes, hexagons and octagons, and they're all moving around on this flat plane. He says, one day, the circle arrived. I said, yeah. And he said, well, you know what happened after that? I said, no, I don't remember. I mean, I did. He said, the church locked the circle up and put it in jail. I was like, that is a new twist on the Flatland story. He said the circle was actually a projection created by a sphere. So the sphere had the bigger picture. You know, in the near-death experience, we sort of get the bigger picture. We get that out-of-body experience, or we have a knowingness of different timelines or different lifetimes that we've lived. So he was saying that the sphere could get out of the jail by just floating through the wall. So he just floated over the wall, and the circle was out of the jail. But I found it really interesting that what he said was that the church, like our limited thoughts, is really what he was saying, had put us in a box, had put us in jail. You know, I thought all this discovery was really interesting for me, but I still hadn't connected the near-death piece until one day a knock came on my door, and it was Ellen Dye, who's a Reconnective Healing Practitioner too, and she says, I was just in the neighborhood and I saw in your bio that you were working at Walter Reed. How did you get in there? How'd you manage to get in the pearly gates? I was like, I'm just over there working with the Red Cross, and I'm working incognito. And so I told her about the program. And I said, how did you find out about Reconnective Healing? And she said, well, I had a near-death experience. And I said, what is that? So the name of the book is The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. So as you facilitate a session, you receive healing. What was happening, and I didn't really understand it at the time, was I was about to receive a healing. And here's how it came, because they come in so many forms. Ellen said, she told me about her near-death experience, and I still didn't connect it with what had happened to me, because Ellen had actually coded in a hospital room. So I thought, oh, you have to code. You have to actually die, be pronounced dead. She said, well, you should come to the IANDS meeting. These groups are so valuable. And so I did, and the speaker that day was Bill Taylor. And he stood up and he was telling about his experience, and I could see an angel next to him. I've always pretty much been able to see. I don't tell everybody, but I could see it. And he said, this angel, and I was like, yeah. This angel said to me, well, you know, you can stay if you want to, but what about your mother? And in that instant, I knew that the experience that I had was real. That it wasn't some figment of my imagination. That it wasn't the fact that I had not worn my helmet that day. And so I went on to explore that. So for me, it brought great healing on a level that I could not imagine. And that box that I'd stuck way back in the closet came to the front and came flying forward. We all have gifts, and that one had a really pretty bow on it. I opened it, and I went on to do this work. because I couldn't not. So for the next 5 years, I sat at my engineering desk, and I used Reconnective Healing in my job, in the context of my job, and here's how it went. My calls, because usually I was an expert on whatever system we were rolling out, it would be like 5 and 6 hours long, right? I was either going to die or have bad hemorrhoids from sitting so long. But I would get calls periodically, and people would drop these lines from Abraham Hicks. You know, Joan, you just got to point your boat downstream and let go of your oars. But now I was able to hear it, so my hearing opened up. I could hear that. I knew that there was some other way of looking at life instead of, here's a problem and I'm going to just shoulder it and muscle on, you know. And that was, as a program engineer and a problem solver, that's how I did it. You know, I just focused on it and I got it done. And I took no prisoners along the way. So it wasn't, if you were on the sidelines having my get the problem done experience, it wasn't very pleasant. But the other thing that happened was I became more aware of people. You know, I was more aware of the problem than the people. So for me, I started to see people more. You know, all those feelings came back. I could feel into people. And so I couldn't deny that oneness that was starting to appear in my daily life. But also with the frequencies, when I would have those 5 and 6 hour network calls, I would be feeling frequencies while they were going on. My 5 and 6 hour network calls went down to 2 and 1 hour network calls. It was really nice. And it wasn't like I knew anything about what was causing the problem. I would sit and I would listen, or just listen. And I would just say, well, have we checked here? And people would say, oh, that's crazy. And we've checked there 1,000 times. And I would hear typing in the background. And I would hear, Joan, I think we got it over here. And they would find the problem. And that was continuous until, you know, I had nothing to do, really. And people were calling me to join their bridges for their Oracle database problems. And I was like, I don't know anything about Oracle databases. I'm a network engineer. Yeah, but you don't have any calls anymore, so come over here with us. And I was able to just sit in on the calls and know where the problems were. So this work opens up your psychic panacea. You have a panorama of what's going on, and it continues to open. It's gradual, but it opens right where you need it. And for me, I obviously needed it in my job. Then my connection with my son was incredible. You know, he was 7, and when kids start to go through their 7 on into teens, a lot of them lose their psychic sight. They can see colors. They know the energetic signals around people. Whether they see it or they hear it, it never gets acknowledged. And so my son and I are sitting at a cafe one day, and I say to him, wow, I see purple around that person, and I just see his mouth drop open. And he says, well, I see blue around that person. And we played this game of what we saw around people. You know, no one had ever acknowledged that. And then the moms at his school would come up to me and say, you know, my daughter Elia had an out-of-body experience last night. She always does in her dreams. So now the conversation was like that, right? And when I had started to go to the IANDS events, more people had had experiences that were, I'd like to say they're transformative experiences. I don't think we need to have that death experience to reach this level of knowingness. That it's right in our grasp today because the energies on the planet have changed. They've changed. It's accessible. Even by clunky engineers like me. You know, and then, you know, I started to migrate away from my day job. So I was doing 5 years, I did about 5 years of Reconnective Healing and engineering together. And then I just had to take the leap of faith because I knew this was important to talk about. And my dad was really worried. He was worried that I went into network engineering. He's a civil engineer. And I tried to tell him, but Papa, you know, this is like those roads. You used to have to carry the information over those roads you built. I said, now we've got them going over fiber optic and through the air. I said, this is like that, except we're building this network of light and information. And he's like, oh, that's just crazy stuff. I said, well, look at it. It's in my DNA because you started in civil engineering, so I had to come somewhere. So every time we allow ourselves to be in that space of awareness, we place our attention on those that we love, on an event that we want to manifest. We catalyze something, right? We're starting to create that. So those are powerful expressions of who you are. And you don't need to have that near-death experience or that death experience anymore. More and more people are having these experiences of Kundalini awakening, or out of the corner of their eye, they see someone or they hear their grandmother. Those are real. When you have the chance, validate that in people. I was so fortunate to have a community, eventually, when the time was right for me. I mean, it took 30 years, but and even, I'm going to just tell you, even with the Reconnection, even though I was working for the last 12 years as a Reconnective Healing Practitioner and a teaching assistant, I wouldn't allow myself to speak about my near-death experience because I didn't want the attention. I didn't want people to think that you had to die in order to manifest your gifts. You have these gifts available to you. They're within you. There's something about this work, the reconnection, reconnective healing, that we as near-death experiencers recognize. We're not learning to do this work. It's not about techniques. It's something we are remembering. And it brings us into wholeness on so many levels. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Look, I didn't think I would tell you guys about this, but I've recently had surgery on my left shoulder. I'm just 3 weeks out of surgery, and this is amazing on a shoulder reconstruction that I have this range of motion. The doctors were pretty amazed. So it helps your wellness quotient physically and spiritually. I just want to take a moment to let you know that this afternoon I'll be taking you through some exercises. And I want to thank you so much for receiving me today. Thank you. This is my favorite part of the presentation because we all get to do this together. So don't get too comfortable in your seats because we're going to do some fun exercises. I want to answer a couple of questions that people had, and if I miss one, just shout out your question. People were asking if they could get a session. I think I'm totally booked. I'm totally booked. But Terry is in town for the next couple of days.
No, unfortunately, I have to leave at noon tomorrow.
Oh, you have to leave at noon tomorrow, but she has some time available. Also, Virginia Adams, who arranged to get Eric to speak here last year, is local. She's a local gal, and she's in Lakewood, Lake Shores?
Lake Forest.
Lake Forest, thank you. Lake Forest.
Grays Lake.
Oh, Grays.
That's Gray's Legs.
Grays Lake.
She's in Gray's Legs.
Is that close?
No.
No. But she would come to you, I'm sure. Especially if she knew, people in the area, she'd come for that. Virginia Adams. Now, you can always have a distance session, and we're going to be playful demonstrating that today. Distance sessions are just as good as in-person sessions, and you don't have to travel. And you can have that with anyone. Go to thereconnection.com. There are plenty of practitioners all over the world. We've taught 170,000 people around the world to do this work. Or I should just say to remember this work. Someone was saying, because I'm a teaching assistant, we were joking that we should change our name to learning assistants. Because every time I have the opportunity to engage with these frequencies, to engage with an audience, I'm learning. So, like I said, the name of the book is The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. And this is the last time I'll plug it. But as you start to feel these frequencies, as you start to facilitate a healing as a practitioner, or even today as we're playful, you as the facilitator, you start to receive. Now, where are you receiving from? You're receiving from this field of awareness. It is looking to you. God, love, source, the universe, it is looking to you for a greater expression in this beautiful focus, 3D. I was just talking to someone, he said, well, you know, I'm starting to see those things now. I'm starting to hear those things. My friend just passed, and things are just picking up for me. I can hear her. I can feel her in my daily life. And that's coming because we're on this trajectory of ascension, right? The reconnection and reconnective healing, they increase our angle, right? So now we're sort of accelerating. So this is an accelerated exchange of light and information. So we're going to play some awareness games today. I'm going to tell you this. The games that we're playing today, the exercises, are in the back of this book. So Eric's story is pretty fascinating. Like Diane said, he had a shared death experience with his mom. She died on the operating table or on the delivery table as he was being born. And at that time, they just didn't know much about it. She tried to tell the doctors, and they were like, "Oh, you know, it's just your imagination." And the nurse kind of placated her. But she told her husband everything that happened. It sort of became a family story that Eric was interested in too. So, thank you, Eric. Okay, so I'm going to have you. Do you want to come down a little bit if you're in the back, or no? Never mind. We won't move people around. I'm just going to ask you as we play these games, find somebody that you haven't worked with, because we're going to do a few practices. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You want to just, I see a head going, no. Then just observe. But, you know, allow yourself to feel this. So first exercise that we're going to do is we're going to practice feeling. So, Diane, I'm going to have you come up because I have to hold the microphone. You are my demo person, or you can hold the microphone for me, either way. Yeah. Why don't you demo for me first? Oh, here you go. So I'm going to have you hold your hands just like this. Now, remember in Reconnective Healing, we're not sending, so don't, if you've had, as a matter of fact, if you're not a virgin healer, meaning that you've done another technique, just put it on the back shelf and try something new. You know, just experience this. So I want you to hold your hands a little bit open, not like too open, but just relaxed open. The idea is to reveal this place, because that's where we're going to start to feel, is in that place in our hands. So open your hands, bring your thumbs back a little bit, and now just start to make a circular motion just with one hand. So it's as if you have a rubber band attached here and here. Just make that circular motion, and you can sort of feel that sensation. Just notice what you're feeling. And then pause, and then go in reverse. And keep your eyes open, because we're engaging our attention. And watch your hand and notice how your hand might be changing. Notice as you make that circular motion, Diane, you can demonstrate for us. Notice as you make that circular motion with one hand, notice the color of your skin. Is it changing? Is the sensation changing in your hand? Now pause, and I'm going to have you, imagine that rubber band is attached between your hand, and you're going to stretch it out. Stretch, just about a foot more than you're used to. And pause. And now with the other hand, start that slow circular motion. I like to say it's like you're petting your cat. You know, so don't pet your cat like that. Run away, pet your cat slowly. You're really feeling everything, every molecule of the atmosphere as you're going by. And now imagine that You still have that rubber band attached. And pause and stretch it again. Stretch. And now with the other hand, reverse the direction. And start to feel that again. And just nod your head if you're feeling something. And it's okay if you don't feel anything. People are like, oh, I don't feel anything, I'm broken. The energy's still flowing, so as we focus on what we feel, notice I use focus on what we feel, not on what we're sending, because we're never sending, we're feeling and noticing. Okay. And now do a really big stretch. Pause and stretch really, really wide. And now come back in again. And stretch again. Notice how the sensation changes. Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to ask some general questions. How many of you felt tingling electricity? Just raise your hands and look around and see. How many of you felt like a magnetic pull? And it's different for everybody. Some people feel that and they won't feel anything else, or some people don't feel anything. How many feel a sense of pressure? Pressure. What about a cool breeze, like or changes in temperature? Changes in temperature. All right. Anybody else feel it anywhere else in their body? Maybe their toes or their head, or they felt it in their third eye area?
Feet.
Feet. Where else?
Through.
Say again?
It comes through.
It comes through you. Anybody else? Yep.
Up and down my body.
Up and down your body. And you said you could feel it when I was demonstrating with Nancy up here. Yeah. So look, we're listening with our hands, right? We could do this work with our feet, or we could do this work with our ear, but it would look really strange. Or one of the really sensitive parts of your body is your tongue, but that would look weird. So you can feel this, not just with your hands, but you might feel something else happening within your body. So notice that. Tune into those areas as we play the second game. Okay, so now imagine in the palm of your hand, Diane, you have a ping pong ball, and you're going to open your hand up just like you were. And you're going to roll it around. So just look at it. Remember, it's about our focused attention. So just look at it and feel it as it's rolling around. And now open the other hand. So you're going to get ready to toss it. Ready? Go! And feel it land in the other hand. So you're watching it again. Keep your eyes on the ball. Now you're going to throw a really high one. And then a low one. And then you're going to throw one underneath. And for those who are really adventurous, behind your back. I can only use one hand because I have to talk with the other one. So, does everybody feel that? Just nod your head. Let me see what we got. Awesome. Okay, these exercises, you can put your ping pong ball down. These exercises are just are gateways, it's like a gateway drug into energy healing. It's a gateway into feeling. So we're listening with our hands. Some of you may even notice you might hear tones in your ears, or you might feel something going through your body. Those are other sensations, and they're valid. What's another one? You might smell. You know, we're using all of our senses. You might smell something. Oftentimes in a session, in the context of a session, I'll smell flowers, or my clients smell flowers. I won't have any perfume or anything in the room, or any flowers in the room, and they'll have that experience. Or they'll smell a relative. How many of you smell spirit before you see it? There you go. So it's the same for me sometimes. I'll smell somebody before they show up for me, and they may show up in my visual cortex, or they may show up in a knowingness. Knowingness is the highest way, right? The rest is valid, but sometimes it's distracting, to see your grandmother standing in the corner and you're trying to give a presentation. It's hard. Okay, so the next exercise we're going to do is a partner exercise. So I'm going to have everybody pair up. If you don't want to pair up, that's fine. You can just stay there. You can just watch. So find somebody that you don't know. And you might have to move around, so it's okay if you move around. I'll give you a chance to just move around and pair up. Look, you can go home with the person and play with this when you get home, the person you came with. Okay. Yeah, you can stand. Standing is probably better because I know these chairs are a little bit hard to turn around in. Unless you just need to sit down, and that's fine. One person can stand, the other can sit. Yeah, that's fine. Is there anybody that doesn't have a partner? Raise your hand. Okay, now go see go and find each other. You guys are together? Okay, that's okay. We're not together. Oh, you know each other. That's okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Anybody else who needs a partner? Any partnerless people? Raise your hand. We'll get you partnered up. Okay. Now, between you, your partners, you're partnered up. Listen up, Terry. Listen up. You're partnered up. So one person is going to take the role of A, and the other one's going to take the role of B. Just decide who's an A and who's a B. Do you still need a partner? Do you still need a partner? Yeah. Come on down. Come on down. Yeah, come on down.
Someone on the floor.
Huh? Is there anybody else that needs a partner? I know, John, will you be the partner?
If I can watch with the camera with
Yeah,
one
that's
eye.
fine. You can do that too.
Okay.
You can keep one eye on there. Okay, good. Now we're all partnered up. Okay, now you've decided who's going to be A and who's going to be B. You could just put your purse down here. Okay. Plan B. Yeah, there'll be no plan B at this point. I don't think anybody needs it. We haven't gotten to that part.
I also have to watch this.
So
Okay.
I'm going to be A, and Diane is going to be B. So B, you're going to hold your hand out, and don't hold your hand out like this. Just rest it, right? You can rest it near your side. I don't want you to get too tired. So don't hold it like this. Just rest your arm down, and you're going to open your fingers just like that. Yeah. So, yeah. There you go. Now, B, or no, A. Okay, A. You're going to bring your hand up to your ear.
I guess I'll be there. Okay.
So
You're B.
now imagine that you're like a knife slicing through this beautiful angel cake atmosphere. Love angel cake. So start to slowly, as you watch their hand, your focus is on their hand. Just listen to me. Don't watch me. You watch their hand. You're slowly coming down. As you come down, very slowly, watch their fingers. Just noticing Diane's arm is like going pulsing up and down, but her fingers started to move. So notice what happens with your partner's fingers. When you get to the level of their hand, you're going to have about 6 inches between you, so don't be too close to them. You're going to open up your fingers, so open up your fingers, and you're going to slowly start that circular motion. So watching their hand, remember, keep your attention on their hand. Start that slow circular motion. Now, if you're their partner, just nod your head. Yeah, I feel that. Just nod your head if you feel it. And don't talk too much. Just nod your head. We're going to pause. And now imagine that they have a rubber band connected between your palm to their palm, and you're going to stretch that out about a foot. And now start that circular motion again. And if you noticed as you stretched that it's sort of changed or intensified, just nod your head. Let your partner know, hey, yeah, that was... that changed. Slowly, slowly with that circular motion. Now pause, and you're going to stretch out again. Now this time take a step back. You can see I almost have like almost 3 feet between Diane and I, and I'm just continuing that circular motion again. And now you're going to wiggle your fingers, just wiggle your fingers like this. And notice what changes in your partner. I just noticed Diane's fingers moved again. And now I'm as if I have lightning bolts shooting out my fingers. I'm aiming at the center of her palm, and I'm going to stretch out again. The Avengers have nothing on this. And stretch. And now explore on your own. Be playful and explore on your own. Go maybe to the other side. And pause. Now bring up your other hand. Bring it up to your ear. And slowly come down into this space. Notice what's going on. And now you have both hands active. So both hands are active playfully in this atmosphere of light and information. So it looks something like this. And you can explore with the circular motion. Stretch. And don't go in and out trying to, because your person might feel a breeze. You don't have to go in and out. Just maintain. Does anybody remember that game where we had those cups and the string was between them, and the tighter you made the string, the more you could hear, the better the communication was? Imagine that's what we're doing here as we stretch and playfully pull. All right, now I'm going to take a few moments to talk to your person and just ask them what they felt.
What did you feel? It calmed me down a little bit, but I it was
She said sometimes you feel
yeah, sort of relaxed, but it's just going to be on the table.
well, no, still.
Oh, just
This is playing.
so it's one that you pick this up?
No.
Oh, okay. What's the U.S.
No, we just look at the drawer.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna have you switch roles now. So just finish up real quickly. Okay, so now if you were holding your hand out last time, now you're going to be the one facilitating the session. So was I last time? Was I? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Now all A's. Listen up. You're going to hold your hand out now. Yeah, just change roles. Can't remember A or just change roles. Okay, now B, you're going to start with your arm, right, your hand up by your ear.
Your B.
Oh.
Now, you're watching A's hand. So everybody focus on the center of A's hand. Just focus. 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 Really see their hands. Look at their fingers. Now slowly, like a millimeter at a time, start to bring your hand down to the level of your partner's hand. Watching, feeling, noticing what's happening within you. What are you feeling as you start this communication, this interaction with your attention as you allow yourself to feel and notice and start that circular motion. Notice what's going on with your partner's hand. Slowly, very slowly, as if you're petting your cat. Your cat's going to run out of the house. More slowly. And pause. And now stretch that rubber band connection you have between you and them. Stretch it out about a foot. And feel that sensation, how it's changed. And notice what changes in your partner's hand as you stretch. And pause. And now continue that circular motion in the opposite direction. Now if you're on the receiving end, I mean you're both receiving, just nod your head that you're feeling something. Just nod your head if you're feeling something. Don't say anything, just nod your head, just nod your head. If you don't feel anything, that's fine too. And now bring your other hand into the mix. So you'll have both hands playing, so bring the other hand down, and now you've got a hand on each side of your partner's hand, and you're starting that circular motion with the opposite hand. And don't start the circular motion with both hands, just the opposite hand, the one you just brought down. And if you're feeling that that's changed for you as they brought the other hand in, just nod your head to your partner, wow, that's changed. And notice where it's changing within you as you feel, as you observe every finger on their hand. Notice what's going on. Now, again, with the rubber band analogy, you're connected with this rubber band. Stretch out. Stretch. Stretch. And again, fine-tune again with one of your hands. Doesn't matter which one, just don't use both. You can use both, it's not wrong. I just want you to focus on what you're feeling with one hand. And stretch. Notice what's changing in your partner's hand. As you stretch. And again, start that circular motion. Bring your attention to what you're feeling within your body. Notice what's happening for you. Notice what's changing in your balance. Notice how you might feel like you're floating. All right, and just take a moment to wind up, and you're going to just chat with your partner and let them know what you felt and what exchange ideas and
sort of more relaxed.
All right, everybody. Let's go back to our seats because I want to ask some questions, and I want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions before we play our next game, before we do our next exercise. Would anyone like to share what happened to them? Anyone feel something unusual or have any unusual visual acuity, or hear anything, or smell anything, or taste anything? Any of those unusual experiences? Not everybody has them.
Everybody has, not visual, but
What happened, Vera?
but
I didn't have visual, I was just sharing with my partner that I've never experienced that in life, that I was facilitating it kind of, but from the top of my head, all the way down my spine and down my thighs into the ground, it was like repeat lighting. Before you said, tell me what you're feeling doing it. I didn't think I'm supposed to be feeling it.
Yeah, so
But then before you ask, I already felt it. Then you ask, I'm like, wow. I mean, so I shared with her, I never had that.
You never had
almost almost like I think I might fall down.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing this? Like 5 minutes, right? So we have immediate access to this. It's immediate, it's instantaneous. And it requires us, like Vera was explaining, I turned my awareness in and I started listening. What am I feeling? And boom, she started to feel it, right? Anybody have an experience where they didn't feel it at all? And that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you're broken. We had a practitioner for 2 years. 2 years. She was a teaching assistant. She didn't feel a thing. She said, I felt like such a charlatan. I go in there, I do the session, I'm not feeling anything. And I said, well, what kept you going, Patrice? And she said, well, my clients would sit up and say these incredible angels showed up, or they would have physical healings. Or they would have, something they were struggling with would dissipate. So trust that the universe has your back. Okay, you cannot inflict the healing. And we don't have that whole thing of negative energy with this. The universe is intelligent. Do you think it's going to do something wrong? Trust. It has your best interest at heart. I think for me, what this work has brought on a level is understanding and wisdom. And when you have that as your companion, even things that they don't look good while they're happening, you're like, oh shit, I'm having a really crazy day. You have I like to have instantaneous OBE, you're out of body, and you're like, oh, well, okay, maybe this has some greater purpose. Like you have the understanding and wisdom to get through that. So this work is, as you facilitate sessions, as you are playful with it, it does that. I don't know why it does that, but it does. Now, somebody asked me about animals. Ooh, can I do this with my animals, right? The exercises you just did, you can do with your animals. Now, you don't have to wave your hands around like this because your cats might get distressed. They're like, oh no! You can just simply, and I want you guys to do this with me so you have an idea of what to do with your cats when you get home, or your dogs. I mean, your dogs don't care. They're like, oh yeah. Open your hands and bring your awareness to your hands. Now, like I said, we could do this with our eyes. We could do this with our ears. We could do this with our big toe, but we feel more in our hands. Like if I drew a picture of us and drew the biggest sense, our hands would be ginormous. And then, like I mentioned before, the second sense is your tongue. It's the next biggest feeler. But we're not doing reconnective healing with our tongues. It's just not. It's not cool. So as you're sitting there with your cats, you can just put your hands on your lap and just open them. Or you could have your cat sit on your lap. And you might even be touching them, and that's okay. You can still bring your awareness to your hands, because we're never sending, we're always receiving. So we're receiving from the universe. As we facilitate healing with animals, I often visit the zoo because our zoo needs help. And animals who are in captivity or in pet shelters, they need help. So if you want to go use this immediately, go over there. Help out with the pets. I found that for SPCA, when I work with animals there, it often accelerates their adoption. So healings come in so many ways, and for them, it accelerates their adoptions. It just does, Or find somebody from here and say, hey, you want to go spring this on the SPCA? Go and see those animals. Go and walk those dogs, and be with those cats and snakes. Look, so some of the registers you'll see in animals. I didn't go over the registers. We're going to do that in another awareness moment. I'm going to talk to you about registers so that you know what to look for. So the eyes will flicker sometimes. Anybody notice their eyes are kind of doing some weird thing? Anybody? No? You'll notice it for this next exercise. But sometimes the eyes will flicker, or in some cases, anybody see fingers move involuntarily? You weren't moving them? Lots of people, I feel lots of people nodding their hands. So those are involuntary movements. Like I was talking about Brian, his feet were moving and his head was going. You'll see some interesting things. In the context of a reconnected healing session, a person will lay on the massage table for 30 minutes. Their eyes will be closed. They'll be laying on their back. And they're just being in the space of observation and awareness. I always tell my clients, you don't have to pray or meditate. Look, this work is beyond the mind. The mind, the frontal lobe. I never tell a person to stop their thoughts. It doesn't work like that. Thoughts are okay, right? When you try to stop your thoughts, it just makes you think more until you're exhausted and you finally have to surrender. But with this work, we don't engage the mind because there's no diagnosis. I'm not trying to figure out which way the energy's flowing. It's just not part of it. It's about wonder and awe. So I'm just going to the next place and going, oh, I wonder what I feel here, or if I reverse the flow, of my circles, what do I feel? If I stretch, what happens? What's next? See, I'm in a state of expectancy. I have no expectation about a particular outcome. And I always tell my clients there are no promises or guarantees, because many people come with an illness and they want a particular cure. This work helps bring us back to balance. The healing may happen in an instant, or it may unfold over time. For Brian, it happened in an instant. Sometimes it takes a while, 1 to 2 to 3 sessions. It'll unfold over time. Or you'll have a healing that you don't expect. For example, I had a gentleman come who had a heart condition, and he came for 3 sessions. And after 2 weeks, because I told him it might unfold over time, after 2 weeks, he said, I still have my heart condition. And I said, well, there's a healing that's happened. We just haven't figured it out yet. He said, oh yeah, I figured it out. And I said, what is it? And he said, I just went to have my eyes checked today, and I don't have glaucoma anymore. Or it could have been something else that happened. Maybe relationships cleared up for him. For me, my healing unfolded over time. That what happened at the pool was something I'm fairly sure was gradual for me. It happened over time. And that young man really gave me validation that what I was doing was real. And he was explaining it to me in engineering terms. Who knew? So your healing comes in fascinating ways. It might be physical, it might be mental, it might be spiritual. Just be in a place where you can allow it to unfold and listen, because sometimes the change appears subtle, but it's not often very subtle when it's looked at in a larger context. Okay, so you guys want to play another game? Was that fun? Did you like it? Yes. Pretty good? Okay. So we're going to do a little game where we work one-on-one, and I'm going to have you pair up again and find somebody you don't really know well, because you can play with these exercises when you get home. So find somebody else, so you stand up again and migrate. If you want to work with the person that you were with last time, that's fine too. I'm not the partner police.
Oh, we're migrating to new people, I guess.
Okay. Okay, now this exercise is a little bit different. Because
Do you have somebody?
everybody got a partner? Anybody need someone?
I need some.
If you need someone, raise your hand. Come on down, and I'll pair you up with someone. Come on down. Come on down. Come on down. Oh, there you go. Okay, raise your hand if you're still partnerless. Okay, good. Okay, now, out of the pair of you, I'm going to have one person sit down. So that one person, one or the other, just sit down. Make sure everyone sit down in each group. All right, person in the chair. Now listen up. Person in the chair. The purpose of this exercise is to show you that something's going on. And I want you to keep your eyes on the road. Okay, you as the practitioner, you're standing, and the client, for lack of a better term, the client or the person receiving is going to be sitting down. I mean, we're both receiving, but the person sitting down, I want you to close your eyes. So person sitting down, close your eyes. If you got glasses on, just take them off and hold them in your hands so that the person can see. Okay, now person sitting down, you're going to have your eyes closed, just like lovely Diane here, birthday girl. And okay, now, what I want you to do, don't look at me anymore. I'm going to have you look at them. Look at them.
Oh, your eyes are closed.
Yes.
If you're sitting, please close your eyes, because that's really weird if you're looking at them and someone's staring you straight back in the eyes. Okay.
Who
So,
has the eyes closed?
the person sitting has their eyes closed. So I want you to look at them and notice what's going on with their eyes. Now, I want you to do the same exercise we did before, but bring both hands up. And now you're going to start to feel, and you're going to just feel around and notice what you feel. If you're standing, you're the one, bring your hands up, okay? You're going to just start to feel, and I'm just coming down near Diane's head, and I'm noticing already her eyelashes are fluttering. And it feels kind of magnetic, so I'm just going to do that circular motion. Just do one hand at a time, so you can see what's going on here. And there you go. And then when you're ready, you can bring your other hand into this exercise. Now again, I'm going to pause as if I'm connected with her with a rubber band, and I'm going to stretch out. And notice what changes with your partner. Now if you're sitting, just allow this. Just notice what you're feeling. Don't be so close up on them that they feel the heat of your hands. Nancy, be about a foot away. And take a step back and open up your fingers so you can feel more. And notice what's going on with your person's eyes. Or maybe their body position is changing. And again, remember you're receiving. Notice what you're feeling. You're listening with a different sense. And when you get ready, take a big step back or further away from them sideways. And take another step. You're going to be about 10 to 20 feet away from them as you step back, but keep your eyes on the road. Notice what's changing for them. Notice their expression may be changing, or maybe their fingers are moving, or they may appear to vibrate. Notice what's happening. Be playful in your exploration. And keep your eyes open. You want to experience this with all of your senses. It's about your focus. If you're sitting down, you have your eyes closed because you're listening internally. But if you're standing, your eyes are open. Now, carefully, I want you to turn your back to your person. Now, keep them between your hands as if you still have them there. Turn your back to that person. And I want you to see them as if they're a tiny version of themselves, even a younger version. You can imagine them as a tiny baby. And just observe them and hold them in that beautiful caress. And notice what you feel. And don't hold your arms out too straight because you're going to feel a tension in your shoulders. You don't want to feel this tension, and keep your eyes open and really see them. Listening. You are listening. As you listen, you receive. As you listen, the person who is so intimately connected with you without separation receives. You are one. Now slowly turn to your person and quietly walk towards them and just touch them and have that conversation about what you felt.
Okay.
So when we started, I guess I got that after that, he just said
Okay, everyone. We're going to switch. If you're sitting, you're going to be standing, and if you were standing, the other person's going to be sitting. Okay. Okay, if you're sitting and you have glasses on, just remove those, just so the person can see your eyes a little bit better. And if you're sitting, close your eyes. And just, if you're sitting, close your eyes, remove your glasses, and be in a space where you're merely observing, wondering, what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? As I mentioned earlier, this work is not about the mind, which is the frontal lobe. I didn't finish my thought. But it's about feeling. So it never really, we're only feeling, we're not interpreting. You see the difference? In feeling, we never engage the mind, which is a mess. Lord, it's a mess. It's the reason they call it monkey mind. It's great for survival in 3D, but it's not always the best access for the realms beyond. Our big antenna is in our cerebellum, okay? So our cerebellum is all interested in feeling and noticing, but not judging. The mind does all the judging. This work is beyond the mind. We're not interpreting. We're receiving.
I would get images at times.
That's fine. You're receiving. That's great.
All right.
That's awesome. So that's perfect. Thank you. So you might receive images. That's great. Let your partner know what you got. It's wonderful. Yeah. All right. So if you're sitting, close your eyes. If you're standing, again, you can bring both hands up or one hand up. But tend to use one hand at a time to feel. You know, don't do the choo-choo train healing. One hand at a time, just feel. And you're going to focus on that person. When you're ready, you can bring your second hand up. And start that exploration of, I wonder what I'm feeling. I wonder what is changing in that person I'm working with. Maybe their eyes are fluttering. Maybe their breathing is changing. And when you feel like you've zoomed in on a place that feels really interesting, maybe it feels fuzzy or electrical, take a step back and stretch that connection. It may tend to intensify. Don't go back and forth. It's not a chair whip or something. Stretch, and then explore again in that area. And notice what's happening. Notice what you're sensing. Maybe it feels warm. Maybe it feels like a cool breeze. Maybe you're feeling it somewhere else in your body. But come a ways away from them. You don't want them to feel the heat of your hand or smell your hand or feel a breeze go by them. Remember, we are everywhere. Distance, time, and space are an illusion of 3D. Your awareness and ability to focus on this beautiful being connects you so intimately through time and space. Time and space disappear. And take another step back. And just be playful, step back or down the stairs or wherever you have to, but you want to get some distance between you and that person. You're demonstrating for yourself that distance is an illusion. And again, tune back in, notice what you're feeling, notice what's changing for that person. Observe and be playful. And now I'm going to have you just imagine that person right between your hands, and you're going to take a pivot and turn your back to them. And you're going to walk about 10 feet away, carrying them between your hands. Go all the way to the wall if you can, or down the stairs. And you're carrying them and you're observing them. You're noticing them. Because you and they are everywhere. They're appearing in 3D over there somewhere, but you and they are everywhere on many levels. Slowly turn again and focus towards them. As you slowly walk towards them, you're going to touch them on the shoulder and share what you experience.
So my observation was, as I was kind of doing this, a slight motion that seemed to follow my motion. Just very slightly turned, backed up. Slight movement, and it's kind of and then at the end, there was a little bit of
Okay, I want you guys to finish up and just migrate back to your seats. Is there anyone that would like to share their experience or what happened, while you were sitting in the chair? Does anybody want to share what happened? Anything unusual? The whole group session? Okay.
When I was sitting in a chair, I was hearing white sound, white noise. Yes. And also I had a problem with my hip every once in a while, so and then it started first hurting, and then it felt better. And I'm like, oh, but that's usually where it's sore.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Thank you, Debbie. Sometimes what happens is you'll have an experience where you have an illness or a challenge, and you'll feel it. Oh, it really intensifies, and it just leaves. It's like I like to say, it's saying goodbye. Anybody else? No? Come on, be brave. Anybody have sight that would like to share? Oh,
I think, can everybody hear me okay?
Okay, thank you. So when my noticing as or standing was that Ken's face just got so relaxed and so soft. It was like he was like 10 years younger.
but it's
And
in
his
your
face-
younger. I love that you bring it up.
Yeah. And then Ken.
Automatic facelift.
No, I felt a quivering in my lips and my kind of bottom area here.
Yeah.
That was, and it was all, for me, it wasn't like that. I felt, everything I felt was more or less in my face.
So I love that you guys brought that up, because occasionally what will happen, especially the seminars now, you remember there are people like you who may not have ever had any healing experience. They'll see, or sight, any psychic sights, they'll see the person's face change. And it'll youth, or it'll turn into somebody, through time. I used to see whole people change costume. It was really crazy. But often with this work, because I was mentioning time and space are an illusion, we'll start to understand our past or even future lives, like we'll get glimpses of them. But what it comes down to is they eventually become not very important, because the focus is right here, right now. And the lessons that we were to learn from those lifetimes, or even our future lifetimes, they start to become apparent in this lifetime. So like I said, Reconnective Healing and the Reconnection, it accelerates your evolution. So that happens to people sometimes. Anybody else experience anything as a practitioner?
Don't go in the audience.
Oh, don't go in the audience, okay. Yeah.
Well, what I noticed was Janie was rocking in her seat. And that's what I noticed. And she first said, I was vibrating. And I said, no, you were rocking. And she did not know that she was rocking in her seat. She was doing this.
Oh, awesome.
She
It
thought
could
she
feel
was-
like vibration, yeah.
She thought she was vibrating.
Yeah, awesome. Sometimes, yeah.
And I'm just gonna say that I noticed that her breathing went down very slow.
Very
And when I
slowly.
carried her, it was like I didn't lose that connection. It
With-
was
yeah.
the same as when I was
It
there.
was near it, yeah, so
Yes, I
there's
felt
no.
the same. I felt that when she walked away, I expected there'd be more disconnect,
Uh-huh.
but that it continued. It didn't matter if she was there or here. The
Perfect,
connection was the same.
perfect, and that's what we teach. And is that the distance doesn't matter, sometimes it intensifies. And sometimes people will report, oh, I felt much more in a distance session than I did, when I was right there with the person. You all have this ability, leave here, go play with the plants, go play with your pets. Oh my God, go play with your grandchildren. They'll be like, woo! Or you'll see as, just have them hold their hand out and say, hey, I learned something new today, and start to play with them. They will give you validation. They haven't lost it yet. They know. And they're so happy when you're like right there with them. Just like with my son, who's like, I also explained to my son, because he pointed behind me, he said, what color is that guy? I said, oh, he's orange. And he said, well, how do you know? You didn't look. I said, well, these eyes are tricky. I said, knowing is the highest way. And, there'll be days where you might see blue around somebody and I'll see another color. And he said, well, why is that? And so, sometimes we're right in tune with each other. We're going to see the same things. And other days we'll be far apart. And, it's always the other person's always a reflection for us of what's going on internally. So there's nothing that we're fixing out there. We're really coming to terms and grips with our own perception of ourselves. I love this word, in Lakesh. I am another you. You are another me. Or Sawabona, which is a Zulu word. It means, I exist because of you. So with Reconnective Healing, we're not really fixing anything or trying to heal something. We're allowing balance to occur. And what we're doing is incredible. We're bearing witness to that individual. What they've come to us for is not to be fixed. What they've come to us for is to be seen in all their glory and in all their struggles. It's okay. And you know, the struggles, sometimes they make us stronger. Sometimes they make us more aware. Sometimes they make us more compassionate. So everything's okay. Just be in that space of observation and seeing that person for who they are. And like you were saying, Kitty was saying, I was like as if his face was changing. I could see him. I could see him. I mean, imagine bearing witness to somebody through lifetimes. I mean, that's what you're doing, right? Anybody else have any sensations while they were playing with the frequencies? Anybody have any sensations within their body that was not in their hands? Yeah.
When I was walking away from her and carrying her as a child,
Yeah.
I felt something touch my hand. I don't know if it was somebody from her past or whatever, but I actually felt somebody touch my hand, and obviously nobody was around me.
Yeah, awesome. See, that's interesting. Yeah.
When I was also turned away and holding Annie as a little girl, or as a baby, I really did feel
You
the
felt
pressure
that sensation,
of
right?
the baby, of her, you know, much more than when I was facing her with doing this. Yeah,
Awesome.
I really felt it.
Wow, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, was that you that raised your hand? Okay. One other thing is, I think that's interesting that you got things, messages. Sometimes messages come. Your psychic, your panorama of psychic abilities opens. It just does with this work. I don't know why that is. But know that the information that you get, you're hearing all the information in the field. You might hear some of their information. You might hear their information or hear your information and think it's their information. Know that the information that you're receiving during the session is your information. Might be looking couched as their information, or their grandmother might show up, and that's okay. In Reconnective Healing, we do not do psychic readings. Do you know why? Because that person is able to receive the information that they're ready for and is there for them. Right? They're not going to miss out on it. They might realize it right there in the session, you know, that their grandmother showed up, or that they have something that they're going to do. You might have seen it too, but we don't tell them. The reason is that we leave them empowered. So a Reconnective Healing session, although you might get psychic information, and that's great, leave that session as it is. It stands on its own. They can get that information, and it leaves them empowered. So they don't come back to you in the next session, lay there for 5 minutes, sit up and say, what'd you get? You know, they're able to receive the fullness of that session. I mean, we have Reconnective Healing practitioners who are psychic readers, but they'll do that in a separate session. Just because it might be helpful to that person, or they feel it might be helpful. I don't do psychic readings because I know the power of the Home Depot. I mean, I know the power. I know the power of the Reconnection and Reconnective Healing. That I know that that person's receptors are opening, and they'll be ready to fully receive that information that they're getting, whether they get it right then or they get it sometime later in their life. Any other questions? I'm going to open up the
I wonder if what if it's someone who has passed on?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to share with you a passed on story. Do I have time, Diane? I have 15 minutes. Okay, good.
Are you going to do it
No. I want to share this with you because right now on the planet we have an aging population, and we're all about to transition. Many of us are close to transition. I was in Panama last year in July, and I was watching two friends of mine there took me to the Panama Canal, and I was just really excited because it's a huge engineering feat, you know. And my dad's a civil engineer, and I was thinking to myself, God, my dad, he would love to be here. And so we left the Panama Canal, and as we got to my hotel, I got a text, and his wife texted me that my dad was down, and the ambulance was on the way. So I'm in Panama. The only thing I knew to do was to sit down and, just like what you were doing today, I was intimately with my dad. I held my hands out, and I saw him there. I was with him. And I saw that he was in a very dark place. Now, I don't mean dark in a bad way. I mean dark in a way that he was making a decision. He was in the middle of choosing whether to stay or to go. And as I started to move my hand in that circular motion in my mind's eye, I could see this vortex of light open. And I could see him start to turn toward it. And on the other side, I could see his mother coming. And in the distance, I could see relatives that some I knew and some I didn't. And oddly enough, my Uncle Melvin, who was a badass, he was in Iwo Jima. And he was standing next to the swirl of light, and he was like, okay, no further. Stop. I knew I couldn't cross him. I wouldn't cross him as a kid. I wasn't going to cross him then. And my dad's mom was coming, and he became younger and younger until he was a boy of about 11 or 12. And that's when his mom passed, when he was 12, when he just turned 12. She died of cancer. She held his hand out and reached for him. And he turned with his young self, with his beautiful blue eyes, crystal blue eyes, and he knew to me, I must be going now. And he stepped into that swirl of light and went with his mom. And for the next month, I could feel him vibrating in all my cells. I could feel his lessons of life permeate me. It was like a wisdom was being transferred. And to have this access to the other side, reconnective healing, was so healing for me. And it gave me a depth of understanding that I'm so grateful to share with you today. I just want to thank you for receiving me today and for hosting me.
Next question.
Yeah.
Have you cured cancer?
Pardon?
Have you cured cancer?
Everybody asks, like, have you cured this or cured that? Within the context of these frequencies, cancer may leave. Bone cancer is a client of mine. And I've seen it happen with other practitioners as well. Registers, fluttering of eyes, the breathing changing, seeing psychic information or seeing visions just go by, or even sometimes I'll see spheres of light go by or rays of light go by. And you'll have a knowingness, or your own problems will be more, you'll have more understanding about them. Anybody else?
What do you see as the difference between this and, say, Reiki?
That's a great question. I meant to cover that. Thank you for cueing me. So what is the difference between this and Reiki? So Reiki is a certain bandwidth of frequencies, and this is inclusive of that, but it expands into more only because we're not sort of limiting with the technique. Now, I'm going to tell you that some people who are doing Reiki nowadays, they aren't using the techniques anymore. It's not Usui Reiki like it was taught before. They're not using techniques. They may have accessed this as well, When you can drop technique and allow and just be in a space of awareness, you are accessing the field. You can call it anything you want. Reiki, Uchiku, Reconnective Healing. But we call it Reconnective Healing just because it's Reconnective Healing. Now hear this. Reconnective Healing is not the frequencies. It is a philosophy. And the philosophy is feel, notice, be aware, explore, be playful, right? Does that answer what you were asking? Hope that answers that. Yep, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.